You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Let's start with the quarterbacks, obviously. Jayden Daniels, first impressions. What do you think?
Obviously, I always have to preface this with, so far it's been small windows, but I think so far, it looks skinny, which is what we expect. He's a big guy. He does kind of have this kind of, kind of casual nature to him, which is something I had heard about him in Arizona State, right? That, he's kind of just a go with the flow guy a little bit, and he's not exactly somebody who's going to be chatting up teammates all the time, kind of keeps to himself. And I definitely noticed that. And granted, it's probably even more now because he's a new guy at a big, LSU. I'm sure that's tough, but you didn't really see him talking to their guys as much while Miles Brennan was constantly talking to them. In terms of performance, again, small sample size, but, we did see him kind of underthrow, like a short throw during one drill to the ground, and I think another was shaky, during 11 on 11, sometimes looked like, and again, I don't truly know what they're asking to do in the drill, but it seemed like he took a while to make a read on some of those, or in 1 7 on 7, he kind of didn't see anything that he liked and took off running, which of course is something to follow with him, I think, with his passing the last 2 years. So I think my quick read is, I'm seeing so little, it's hard to say he really wowed me. And I do kind of think this is I think my takeaway from the first week is I do think this is a real two-man quarterback competition more than some people think.
Okay. What are the other takeaways, again, just observing the quarterbacks then that you saw?
Yeah, I think Brennan, again, I did really notice he's a 6-year guy, and I think he's really leaning into the leadership aspect of, he's talking to Garrett Nussmeier after a rep or Walker Howard or giving him a pat and all that. He's trying to do all that, and he talked to us about that he is trying to, do that role. And he is one of the 10 guys named like the leaders of the accountability teams that Kelly's implemented and things like that. So I do think he has a solid stamp, I guess, in that sense. And I think the theme, it's really interesting because I think and we talked about this before when he first committed, I believe, that they're two guys that are kind of in similar, their stocks are down mode, but their upside so high, right? Where Brennan, there's this real theme in every interview we've had of get back to those 3 games in 2020. This is evidence of who you are. You've shown what you can do, but 3 injuries in 4 years, and that's a real thing. And Jayden Daniels, they think that they limited him at Arizona State. They think that, he's way more than just a play extender. They're going to get more out of him, but at the same time, you have, a year or two of evidence of poor passing, kicking off running too quickly and all that. So it is really interesting that I think we overthink this to some extent. It's 2 guys, who have high upside, but they still have a lot to prove.
Anything from Walker Howard? Any observations?
He's recovering from the injured thumb, so I think even him throwing at this point is ahead of schedule and pretty, they're pretty thrilled about it. I think you look at him and, God, I hope this doesn't come off an insult because I think he's going to be a star eventually. But you can see a redshirt year will probably be good for him, just in terms of like physically, right? He doesn't look as built as some of the other guys, and I think Walker Howard's in really good shape. But he probably could use that year to gain that 10 pounds of muscle or whatever and get there. He just looks like a guy who is going to be really good, but is an early enrollee freshman. So I think he looks fine throwing the ball. Kelly told a funny story about how they weren't smart enough to realize that they had a clap cadence, and he has an injured thumb. So every time they were doing the cadence, he was wincing in pain, and they're like, "Oh, we're dumb." I know, right? Like, hey, I guess we should have done a verbal cadence with him. So I thought that was funny. But no, I think he's on great schedule. I'd be surprised if he's really competing this year.
Brody Miller is with us. Offensively, who else looks? I mean, I get it, right? They're not even pads yet. Who looks? Who kind of looks the part? There's always guys that flash. Who looks the part?
I'm guilty of being this guy who refuses to sell my stock on John Emery Island, but at the same time, he looks really, really built. And there's always good built and bad built. I think he's listed at 234 now.
Wow.
No, 215. Sorry, but no, Brennan's 234. But still, John Emery's 215. That's massive, and he looks really built. And I in drills, he looked really impressive sometimes. Just, and yeah, they're not really tackling yet, but really making guys miss an open field and just looks really physically imposing right now. He did also have a fumble, and Frank Wilson got on him really hard and made him run to the end zone, so keep that in mind. But I think Emery really looked the part. this one isn't new, but Brian Thomas just looks like a grown-up, and he did last year, right? But he just looks like a guy who was so physically imposing, and that's why it was so interesting to hear Kelly, I believe, last week say, hey, maybe a tight end just isn't working out for what they have right now, and there's no transfer. Maybe Thomas is a guy you consider there, and I think they're far away from that, but it's interesting because he does physically look the part there. So those ones jump out, and then just I can't say enough about what Mason Smith looks like physically. I mean, he was there last year, but he just looks like he should be, and all indications are he should be one of the 2 or 3 best linemen in college football if he really puts it all together. And one other thing that just jumped out to me was, Greg Brooks is a guy, obviously 3-year starter. You expected him to be a veteran there, but I feel like I noticed him already being like the vocal guy, like, calming guys down after a mistake, or the guy calling out all the communications before a play, and maybe I'm overreading into that, but I thought that was interesting that, the new transfer's already taking on that maybe leadership role there. So those are some things that jumped out.
No, I was going to ask
and
about
Mekhi Garner also.
Yeah, no, you beat me to that punch, which I was going to ask about what transfers were standing out. So you mentioned Brooks. What else, either from like practice rep observations or just what you just kind of described there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and Brooks, I think, was really interesting to watch. And Kelly had some interesting comments about how Jarek Bernard-Converse, who obviously, I think it's safe to say, of all their transfers, is probably the most sure thing, expected to be a guy. Really raved about him as also like a key character addition, which is a bit of a theme through a lot of what they did. They did do their research there, from what I understand, and I think that jumped out. Mekhi Garner just looks huge, and I think there were some questions coming out of UL from some other schools about whether he's quick enough for the SEC and all that, and I don't know. But Kelly called him an NFL corner, and he looks just massive. You're almost surprised watching him out there that he's a corner. He looks like he could be, I don't even know, he almost looks too tall to be a linebacker in some ways. So I think that definitely jumped out. Miles Frazier, he wasn't taking first-team reps, but it's so hard in that window to tell if that means he's just not doing certain things or if he's literally not getting those reps right now. But he looks thicker than I thought. I think the expectation I had was a freshman FIU lineman who, was going to be a little more like long and raw, but he's thick. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but that also certainly jumped out. And then, there was another I had in mind, but those I think are the first things that really jumped out for me with the transfers.
He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. I'll give him a follow. Read his stuff at The Athletic, a little LSU football practice report. What about just like the functionality of drills, considering typically what we got to see was glorified stretching? What in the past, I mean, and that's not atypical from anywhere, but it sounds like Brian Kelly's allowing a little more observation. I mean, to actually see team drills is kind of stunning. So what other observations just about the way and the nature that drills are being conducted?
Yeah, and it's like I'm always wary of sounding like I'm just, sucking up to this new staff or something. But, I mean, it was genuinely noticeable. And I talked to reporters who've been covering this team for 20, 25 years, after practices to kind of be like, am I wrong here? And they agreed. They're like, they have never seen practices so controlled and intense. Controlled chaos was the phrase I wrote this morning, but everything seems to be immaculately planned. And then in turn, because of everything being so planned and simplified, everything seems so much more high intensity, everybody going hard. Coaches have like very specific teaching points for each drill that they are harping on. And I saw, again, I don't want to sound corny, I feel like I saw more actual teaching, like not just like, good job, next rep, or like do it over, but like, hey, this is specifically what I need you to change there. And I noticed that with a lot of the assistant coaches. So again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it just really did seem like a noticeable kind of control about this practice with intensity.
What other observations of the coaches? I mean, what coaches stood? I mean, half the staff, more than half the staff turned over.
Joe Sloan, and granted, a lot of us got a better look at him because we wanted to watch the quarterbacks, but Joe Sloan was really interesting. Granted, he's a guy who's been a relevant OC in footballs, but he really did. I don't know. He was very specific with the guy. He wasn't afraid to be hard on Garrett Nussmeier and be like, do this drill over again and correct specific things. He was really intense and animated out there. It was definitely just kind of interesting, for lack of a better word, to see, Frank Wilson kind of, this head coach suddenly, kind of working with running backs again, but he was really good and really, he wasn't afraid to get on John Emery, right? When he fumbled the ball, he was immediately getting on him to run back the other, to run and, to the end zone. I think those jump out. Brad Davis we've seen before, so I guess that's not one to address. Mike Denbrock, he almost had like a, how do I put this, like a fun dad vibe, where he was wearing like a backwards hat and just kind of running around and like making jokes about like, making you guys run to get your GPS data up and like, stuff like that. So I think those are some of the main ones that jumped out for me.
Brody's got a practice report up, all of his takeaways. You can read it over there at The Athletic right now. He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Specialists, are you getting to see any of the specialists?
Yeah, I won't lie to you. I guess I really did not get to at all.
No, it's okay. I just didn't know. Like, I mean, in the past, normally we'd be outside, and they'd make the specialists go inside, so we couldn't see them. It's like, I guess they didn't want us charting, like, were they making kicks or not? So, so a couple of practices this week. They'll go Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday. And, Brody, if I'm not mistaken, if I read the report, we get to stay there for the whole practice on Saturday. Did you read that?
We do. I know it's going to be a new experience, yeah. And shoot, even last Saturday, man, it was like, we got to see actual 11 and 11. We got to see 7 on 7. We got to see, real padded stuff. I don't even mean this as a diss to the old regime because in a lot of ways that Orgeron regime was a little more accessible than a lot of past ones around, the SEC. So I'm not even, but what we're getting with Kelly is pretty shocking, yeah. So man, we'll actually be able to watch the quarterback go up against the first team defense, and it's just wild.
And might also get a look at the. Hey, last thing I forgot when we were talking offense. Were you able to tell anything about rotation on the offensive line? Who's playing where?
Yeah, so it's a great question because it was tricky because the first team O line we got was Cam Wire left tackle, Tre'Mond Shorts left guard, Charles Turner center, Cardell right guard, and then Marcus Dumerville right tackle. And I don't want to put too much into that because, as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure Frazier was limited what he was doing. Didn't see Anthony Bradford out there at all. Obviously, Dellinger has a shoulder, so he's only participating in limited things. And I don't think I saw Marlon Martinez doing actual first team, second team stuff. So it's like, and that's going to be one of the first questions I ask Kelly is who's actually 100%, because I can't tell if I should make too much of that O-line or if it's just certain guys are out right now.
Yeah, good point. Brody Miller from The Athletic on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Y'all go give him a follow. Thanks, man. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks as always, man. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.